new memoir that's called A Dog Named Leaf, the hero from heaven who saved my life. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ellen Anderson.
This mic, so we can continue with the idea that animals and people are not that different. Now, my wife Linda and I, when I first came in here and I came over and talked to Linda, she's my wife and she's sitting right over here, she was pointing at your brand new screen and she was grinning. Look, look, look. And I looked over there and I saw my picture. That really was a surprise. It was really kind of nice to be able to see that when I first came up here. Very, very welcoming. Thank you so much for that. Linda and I started the Angel Animals Network one day in the mid-90s when we were walking around Lake Harriet. We had our dog at the time, Taylor, with us, and she was a yellow lab, and every time we were walking around the lake, people would stop, and they would grin, and they said, "Do you know your dog is smiling?" And we just loved it. All the people, even when they were having bad hair days or were they looking kind of grim, she would make them smile. So we talked about it. We said, we both enjoy writing. We love animals. We'll have to have our day jobs for the rest of our lives, but what can we do? What can we do to bring more love to this world? So we talked about it. We said, well, why don't we share stories about people and their pets? But we wanted to take it a step further. So we asked a very basic question. What spiritual lessons have you learned from your animals, from your animal companions, from animals in nature? And back then, the internet wasn't like what it is today, so I made some posters and put them up at coffee shops and at the grocery stores and did a little bit on the internet, even though it was very basic at the time. And we were wondering, what have you learned? What spiritual lessons have you learned from your animals? The animals in your lives. Did you learn unconditional love? Have you learned compassion? Have you learned courage? Did you learn empathy? All the different things that make us the best people we can be in life, we see in abundance in animals. So we asked that question, and within 30 days we had at least 100 stories. Within 60 days, many, many more came in of people all around the Twin Cities and around the world because of the basic web as it was back then. And so we started sharing them in a newsletter, a printed newsletter that we sent out every other week. And we had subscribers, and people were sharing their stories, and they were telling us, no one's ever asked me that question. It's always been about training. It's always been about, those aspects of, is my dog doing what I want my dog to do? But instead, what are you learning? And these stories were glorious. They were so heartfelt. They were just opening up. People were opening up and telling us all these different things that they learned and how they became better people because of the animals in their lives. It was beautiful. So we started a newsletter. We shared these stories, and we also started to build a book out of it. And we had our first book called Angel Animals, Exploring Our Spiritual Connection with Animals. It was published, and after that, a dozen more were published year after year. We just kept on going because there were so many stories. So that was really beautiful, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that why is Minnesota such a perfect place for to open this up? What is so special about Minnesota? And I remembered when we first moved up here, and Linda went to St. Cloud University, so she kind of knew, and she was showing me around. We were driving around, and she was saying how different it was from other cities in the country. And so we drove through this underpass, and there was some graffiti on the wall. And she said, everything's spelled correctly. And I wasn't quite getting it. And then she said, look at the punctuation. And she looked at me and saying it in a way that sounded the most profound thing that she's ever said. They take education seriously in Minnesota. So that was our first. So we were driving down the road, and why are animals in Minnesota the perfect place to launch Angel Animals and share these type of stories? Well, we stopped, and we were wondering, why are we stopping? It's a 4-lane highway. Both sides are stopped. These cars, I need to get... Then all of a sudden we saw a family of mallard ducks crossing the road. In the middle of a busy roadway, both sides of the roads were stopped in order for that family to cross. How special that was. And it was cute because I looked around and I thought, oh, these drivers must be irritated. Well, none of them were, because that was the norm in Minnesota. So we went on and we went to a coffee shop. And we went to a coffee shop and we went up to the counter and we ordered some coffee and some muffins. And this young teenager, looked like maybe he was transplanted from Disneyland, served us our coffee and gave us our muffins, and then asked, would you like cutlery with your muffin? So I looked at Linda and I kind of whispered, what planet are we on? So all that combined, Minnesota nice, the ducks, the really well done graffiti, and the fact that in the 90s, when we were first looking around, everything was so completely pleasant, including coffee shops. So we were really moving forward and wanting to launch this here, and which we did. Well, years later, we were thinking in terms of Taylor died from old age and cancer, and she was our beloved pet, and we loved that dog so much. And there was we were looking at the deeper aspects of this relationship between people and pets. It was a spiritual aspect. It was something that was deeper than anything, you're a nice dog, please sit. It was much, much deeper than that. There was something on a very, very deep level, and we wanted to explore that, and we were doing it through these stories in our books. Spiritual lessons. I'll give you an example. Years later, I was at Chuck and Don's with our adopted dog, Leaf, and more about Leaf later. But I wanted to share with you why it is so special to recognize that spiritual element, that divine within each being, including animals. I was in Chuck and Don's just over there. We just came from the dog park, and he was so excited. You know how Chuck and Don's, all the good stuff is at the floor level so the dogs can be shoplifters. Poking the nose and looking at different things. Well, he was as excited as he could be, so he ran off and started poking all the different toys to see which ones squeaked and which ones he wanted to take home. And of course, being who I am, he would have his choice. Well, this little boy came up to me, and he was about 8, and he said, may I pet your dog? Well, I said, you can, but he's kind of excited. This is really overwhelming for him, all the smells. And so Leaf ran over, got a couple of pats, and ran back to his toy search. And then the little boy said, my dog died last night. And you know how it is. You want to really just grab him and hug him and say, oh, you poor baby, that's so awful. But I knew inside I had to say something that acknowledges his pain from a man to a boy who just needed to know that other people knew it hurt a lot. So I said, it must hurt a lot. And he said, it did. It really hurts. And he talked about the leading up to the dog's death, losing all his memory. He's an older dog that has been with him for all his life. Well, Leaf was listening, and he quit squeaking the toys, and he walked back over to the boy. And he sat in front of him. And as the boy was talking, he started caressing this little Cocker Spaniel, this little dog that we adopted from the shelter, that normally is totally involved in the excitement of the day, especially at a pet supply store. And he started talking, and he started relaxing, and just realizing that he could talk about it, and it was okay how much it hurt. Well, Leaf sat there, and I was really kind of surprised. I didn't expect him to do that, but he sat there until the boy was done, and you could tell the boy had a little bit of light back in his eyes because he felt better. Somebody acknowledged the pain, and the dog was there to help during that time. So we had a moment there where I recognized Leaf as a soul being there for another being in times of need. Now, this came quite a bit as a shock because Leaf came from a very different background. Now, he did do wonders, but in the beginning, we adopted him from the shelter. He was abandoned. He was about a year old. And we didn't know it until we brought him home, but he was a complete, total wreck. He really had a hard time with people, touch. He couldn't sleep. He was shattered, basically shattered. And he felt like no matter what, he would be left. We had an animal communicator talk to him, and we were on the phone with the animal communicator, and he just refused to say anything to her. He's not talking to me. He's just not saying anything. Finally, she was able to say, "You're home now. Everything's going to be okay." And then he said in no uncertain terms, as he bowed his head and went to the floor and looked down as if in total shame, "I was left." He was dumped at the shelter, abandoned. And for a little guy, about a year old, that would be the most traumatic thing in the world. He didn't know who to trust, what to do, and of course later we found out there might have been even abusive aspects to his background. So he came home and he howled all night. He was scared. He didn't want to be touched. He was frightened. He just wasn't trusting people. Now it's interesting that we adopted this dog, because before I came up here and got a job as a computer software analyst, I was in Atlanta, Georgia, doing police work in a bad area town. Picture me as a police guy. Sometimes it takes a really good actor to do police work. But I went into police work because I had my degree in journalism. I wanted to go in and get more storylines and be able to have more to write with, more characters. But it turned out I kind of liked it because I was able to help people who needed help. But it changed my attitude towards people. Just like Leaf, I just saw a lot of people that were very, very bad and that were hurting each other and didn't do the right thing over and over and over again when it came to their family and their friends, when it came to the basic elements of life like honesty and decency. It was just something that was inside my head as it was inside Leaf's head, and we were together viewing the world in a way that maybe is not a healthy way to view the world. Well, soon after I adopted Leaf, and I was thinking, I'm still developing this idea of this beautiful relationship between dog and man, deeper than just a canine companion, deeper than maybe just an animal to come home to, which is all good. And I want to make sure that you understand, if you adopt an animal, more than likely it's going to go smoothly, everything can be perfect. But this particular animal was there for me, and I was there for him, and we were both growing. So soon after we adopted it, I found out, after some tests, that I had an unruptured brain aneurysm. And then other tests happened, and told me, in effect, my body was falling apart. A perfectly healthy guy, and all of a sudden I'm just falling apart. It was kind of funny in a way, because the doctor, I had to keep on asking, well, where is this aneurysm at? He kept on saying brain aneurysm, but I couldn't put the two together. So after a couple of tests, we realized that, in fact, I would have to have surgery. So I'm just thinking in terms of the trust that we were building together. And during this process, I and Leaf were always together, and he was always there for me. As it turns out, now, does everyone in here had dreams, vivid dreams at times, something that's really, really substantial in your life and you really pay attention because it's so real? Exactly, yeah. Well, I had this amazing dream. It wasn't amazing, it was a nightmare. After I found out all these different things, and I had a surgery date looming, and I had other things going on with my body, that I wasn't going to make it. It was a simple dream, very vivid. There was this building of life in my dream, and there was this long line of people I know, recognize, friends and family, a long line, endless people, some I didn't recognize, all going into the building of life. I was not in the line. And also, and I heard them talking about the building of life, I heard them talking about the experiences they were going to have and all the wonders of this building, the oceans, the forests, the books, the relationships, everything was there for them to continue with their lives. Everyone in line had a piece of paper, a ticket. They all had a ticket to enter. I did not have a ticket in my dream. Was this a prophetic dream of catastrophe? Was this something that I didn't know? I just didn't have a ticket. I looked around for ticket counters. I looked around for help. I did whatever I could to find a ticket. My wife and my dear friends were in line, and they were moving so fast ahead of me, I would never be able to catch up. I tried to get into the line. But the people looked at me and says, "You don't have a ticket. You don't belong here." They made me not be in the ticket of life line, being able to go and have my life continue. And Linda was in my life. My wife and my friends were far, far ahead of me. I could never catch up, even if I was allowed in the line. It was as if I had never existed. I was alone. It was as if I had never existed. I was alone. Now, what does this little dog do? I woke up from the nightmare. He's on the side of the bed. Remember, he doesn't like to be touched. He's still in his shaky mode of, I don't like people. People are not nice. But he jumped on the bed and allowed me to hug him. It was the most beautiful thing. I was sweating. I was really concerned about my dream because I knew and I believe that dreams sometimes talk about what might happen in the future. Well, later in the morning, I told Linda about the dream, and Leaf was laying there on the floor listening intently. And of course, the visuals of having a piece of paper or not having a piece of paper was really intense. Linda asked me, and this is a spiritual aspect of life, did you go back into the dream and change it? I said, no. I woke up. Leaf was there with me. Now that's something to consider. I mean, I didn't have the opportunity, but she said that's a way of going and making things change or have a end results that's different than what the dream had originally. So Leaf was there listening. Later on in the day, after I told Linda about the dream, later on in the day, Leaf began doing something he had not yet done in behavior, which was very hard to find that he had not yet done something in bad behavior. He started taking the papers down off the living room table and ripping up in shreds and little pieces of paper, grabbing him with the mouth, bringing him to me and dropping them at my feet. Now, would you say that I was dense, that I didn't get it? Yeah? I was kind of dense. I didn't get it. I kept on thinking, don't do that. We have too much to think about without having to deal with more problems here. But he would keep on doing it. He'd get the magazines and rip them up and bring them to me and drop them at my feet. I still didn't get it. I get it now. But he knew on a soul level, and I have to say that, soul to soul level, what I needed, this person, Alan Anderson, to continue my life. In my mind, I needed a ticket because it was so ingrained to me that something terrible was going to happen when it came to moving on and no longer being part of this world. And I had a lot more things I wanted to do. I really did. I didn't want to move on. I wanted to stay here. But this little guy was determined that I was going to stay here, and he was going to give me a ticket. So finally I had to gather all the papers up and put them high on the dining room table so he wouldn't quit ripping them up and trying to bring them to me. And I still didn't get it. I would think that if everyone wanted to say you were dense, it's a perfectly good thing to say, but that's just where I was at the time because I was thinking about other things instead of all the help that I was getting right there at my feet. So I got left was his trauma. People are not nice was his trauma. I'm about to go into surgery. I have other things going on with my body. And I still, from that 8 years of police work in Atlanta, have in my mind, I really don't trust people. The doctor I found was the best in the Midwest, probably the best in the country. I had all this support from friends and family, and of course Leaf. But there was still that element of trust. Him and I were working together to build trust. Now I'm going to share with you a secret. I'm going to share with you a secret that I want you to know. We're going to do a little spiritual exercise, a little meditation after the music in a few minutes, but I wanted to share a secret that really helped turn things around with me and Leaf. And this secret is really something I just love with all my heart, and I really want you to know it worked for me, and I hope that maybe if you give it a try, it will work for you. Now, it's not really a secret, but I like to think of it as a secret, and I'm going to share a secret because I'm talking, and it's kind of fun to have a secret to share. But really, in the middle of the night, he would howl, and I'm doing the whole house training thing. So at 2 in the morning, take him out. Midnight, 4 in the morning, take him out, come back in. He would howl some more. He couldn't sleep. He was traumatized. And this was day after day, night after night, week after week. Finally, I was going to bring him into my office area, and we had a recliner chair, and I would hold him on my chest. And he could hear my heartbeat. And I would say, "You're such a beautiful boy. Everything's going to be fine. I love you very much. No matter what, this is your home forever and ever and ever." I was trying to reassure the emotional aspects of him, the body, that everything would be okay. And he knew on a soul-to-soul level that everything would be okay, but he wasn't there yet physically. In order for him to heal, I chanted a word that was really perfect for him and for me, and it's called HU, H-U. And I said, HU. He started snoring. He was going to be able to sleep. He was relaxed. And I would keep on petting him, and everything's going to be fine. And I would chant again, and I would sing. Now, for me personally, this is like a love song to life, to the divine, to God, whatever you want to call it. This was, to me, saying to the world, I love being a spiritual being, and I love this spiritual being that I'm helping, not knowing how much he's helping me at the time. So I would do, and it's such a beautiful noise, it's a beautiful sound, and it was a healing and expanded my awareness and understanding just a bit to know that it was a soul-to-soul connection that we two had. Now, I'm going to ask Carolyn to share a song about that connection. If you would, Carolyn, that would be fantastic, and then I'll continue with this story after our music. Thank you so much.
Footsteps in the sand that marks where your waters meet my land. 'Cause there's no separation between the worlds that I seek. There's no separation, no space beyond my reach with these golden wings. I dove in face first, and I quenched my greatest thirst, a longing I'd felt to be free, to know that I am eternally between the worlds that I seek. There's no separation, no space beyond my reach with these golden wings. I have braved tidal waves, and I've withstood hurricanes, and I won't go till I know the ocean. There's no separation, no separation, no space beyond my reach with these golden wings, with these golden wings, with these golden wings.
Thank you. Beautiful, thank you. So what I would like to do is to lead you in a meditation. What we're going to do is sing Hugh with me for a moment or two, and then go into a quiet meditation. And at the end of a couple of minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, I will say, "May the blessings be," and we'll come back. Now, you can sing Hugh with your eyes closed or open. It doesn't matter. Or you can stay silent and sing it inwardly. Whatever is comfortable for you. Fill your heart with love as you're doing it, and make it sort of something that's, you're not asking for something. It's sort of an open door to experiencing God's love without necessarily asking or having some sort of predetermined idea of what you would like to do in the meditation or the act of contemplation. So let's go ahead and start. blessings be. Now, for me, that simple word was something that helped me and Leaf heal and grow to begin trusting one another. What happens when a dog begins to understand that people are good, that there is a spiritual connection, that they're acknowledged as an equal, so to speak, with feelings and with the mind and with all the things that we want to be acknowledged for ourselves? I'll give you an example. We're in the car and Leaf is in the driver's seat, but just 10 minutes earlier when we were walking down the street, he growled at a lady who came up to him, wanted to pet him. And she backed off and she got scared. He was beginning to become more trusting. I lectured him in the car. I said, Leaf, why did you growl at that lady? I said, this is unacceptable. I was bringing the teacher at that point. I said, this is not something that you do. She was being nice. Why did you growl? I tell you what, Leaf, and he looked at me, kind of yawned and looked the other direction. I said, Leaf, look at me. And he looked back and I said, look at me. Leaf, I want you to do one nice thing today. I don't care what it is. You're going to do one nice thing and you're going to show me that you can be nice. So I took him to the little dog park that we have near here, and there was an older man sitting at a bench, and he had this little white dog there, and he was throwing a tennis ball. How this little white dog could get his mouth around a tennis ball, I'll never understand because it was way too large, but he tried to bring it back, and finally, after a while, the man would throw it. He's an older gentleman and had a hard time walking, but he would walk and get the ball when the dog didn't bring it back. Well, we came into the dog park, and Leaf was kind of watching this. We were playing, and what he did was kind of interesting. He was observing this, and the next time the man threw the ball and the dog just refused to go get it, he ran over to the tennis ball, picked it up, brought it back to the man, dropped it at his feet, looked at me as if saying, see? And then to put icing on the cake, the man looked at me and says, your dog is nice. So I got the message that even though he yawned and looking out the window, he did get the message that I wanted to see, and he actually was nice. And then it built and built, and of course my whole broken brain thing was taken care of, and I'm healthy, and it's all a process that we went through together to become spiritual partners. Now, isn't that a nice term? Often we forget that life is much more than just two people or two individuals, people or animal, or two individuals in life, marriage or friends. We are truly spiritual partners. And we are going through life learning from each other and helping each other grow spiritually, becoming the very best dog that he can be when it comes to love, compassion, empathy, service. Me becoming not the fearful ex-cop who thinks all people are bad, but actually becoming a loving, spiritual person that will give and be there for others when they need things and need help. Wouldn't that be nice to live life as a spiritual being and not be afraid? Now, I'm sharing my story with you right now, and I'm sharing my story in the book. It's Belief in My Story. It's really his book because there's so many stories about him. He's just a joy to write about over the years. But I did want to say one thing that was kind of important. What keeps us from being all that we can be on a spiritual level? Would our people that we work with say, oh, dismiss that? What's king in this world, in this Western society? What is king? Logic, reason, blind studies, anything and everything that goes with the brain and how the brain works. Most of us, many of us, probably nobody in here, just me, would say, what would Spock do if I had a problem? But it is true that if you combine those three elements that make a wonderful tool for each of us with the idea of spiritual awareness and spiritual love and gratitude for life, and make those three things as big of a kings as the other elements in our brain, how wonderful life could be. If I go to work and I talk about things and I open my heart and I'm not afraid, there could be people there judging me, but why do I want to play that game? Do I care? There might have been a time when I did care, where I would stay quiet, where I would be meek, where I wouldn't be all that I could be in any given moment because I did not want to be judged, dismissed, not taken seriously, all the things that people do. So does anyone sort of have that feeling sometimes that you can't be all that you can be because of the harshness of the world we live in? That true open heart combined with a really good brain can do wonders in this world, but we're afraid. I was afraid. Maybe there's some in here that are afraid of being judged. Now, I learned through my time with Leaf that life, and I went on the brink. I knew that it could easily end. I knew I could be disabled. I knew I could have a stroke. I could be like all those people I saw in police work where they lived miserable lives with brain damage and couldn't do anything without the help of others. I did not want to be in that boat. Now, I do want to say there are a lot of people that have brain damage that live really good, fulfilling lives, but I was fearful of that life. I did not want to go that direction. When you're on the brink and you're thinking life may end, you kind of change a little bit. The little things don't seem so important. The people that judge you are no longer of value. Okay, judge me. I'm going to be who I am on any and all levels that I can possibly be. I'm going to be the very best I can be. And everyone in here, I have a feeling, feels the same way. And I just wanted to mention that because when you're with an animal companion and they are truly there for you and you know that you're talking to another aspect of the divine, soul equals soul, there's so much more to life because you know that you aren't afraid anymore. You're just going to be yourself. Move forward. And that's one thing that Leaf taught me. He really, truly saved my life in so many different ways. And also, if you happen, it's sort of part of the book, the whole ticket thing. I wanted to right before the operation, I saw him in the waiting room, sort of in a visual in my mind's eye, and he had his piece of paper in the mouth. I still didn't get it. Talk about it. I still didn't get it, believe it or not. So as the surgeon and the anesthesiologist was putting the mask down on my face, I saw him again in my inner eye. He had that piece of paper in his mouth. He dropped it, and I reached out and touched it. And I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that that was my ticket to life. Delivered to me inwardly by my precious animal companion, my friend, my soulmate, so I would know going to sleep and having brain surgery that everything was going to be okay. To me, in my personal experience, and sharing that is very important. Will I be ridiculed by those who are more prone towards the mental? Of course, and it's expected. By sharing this, as you might be sharing your stories, will be judged harshly by some, others will applaud you, of course. So writing and talking about this subject is always an interesting ride, but I wanted to share that don't be afraid, move forward and be all that you can be, especially when it comes to the spiritual aspects of self. And let that shine as the light can shine in all of us. And I appreciate this time. I would like, Carolyn, could you end my part of this with your beautiful song that you can share with us again? Did you want to let us know what this title is? Because I wasn't quite sure. What's that?
It's called Eyes of Soul.
Eyes of Soul. Thank you.
Searching through all the dark nights, through all my life. Now I have a knowing. The truth resides in my own eyes. Looking through the eyes of soul, the world never seemed more perfect before. Looking through the eyes of soul, soul, I only feel the greatest love I've known. Everything is where it should be, even all the obstacles that life has for me, and I am full of gratitude to be aware of the divine truth. Looking through the eyes of soul, the world never seemed more perfect before. Looking through the eyes of soul, I only feel the greatest love I've known. All is well. All is well. All is If you have been searching through all the dark nights, through all your life, you have been growing. The truth resides in your own eyes. Looking through the eyes of soul, the world never seemed more perfect before. Looking through the eyes of soul, I only feel the greatest love I've known. All is well. All is well. All is
Thank you very much. I wanted to end by reading this one thing. Like many of us, I was kind of stuck, and I took my health and my time here for granted. My dog Leaf taught me to live in the moment, be open to love, and have sincere, unqualified gratitude for each moment I live in this world. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Alan Anderson and Carolyn Walsh. Beautiful, beautiful.